All right. Whoops, left the slides up. I'm a mess today. Here we go. All right. Today, we are talking about on Boss Beat the concept of nonpartisanship. So, welcome to Boss Beat, a latte of leadership for those seeking to be and build better leaders in business. It's late in the day. Things had some hectic work I had to get done this morning. So, instead of a latte, I'm drinking water tonight. Hope you had a great week. All right, let's dive in. As a reminder, if you're new to Boss Beat, which most of you are because it's only the fourth time we're doing it, I'm talking each day about one of the 7 core principles of great leaders, specifically how it can be applied in business for being better bosses in business. Those 7 principles are on your screen right now. I won't recite them all again at the moment. The reality is, though, these are all part of the acronym model of servant leadership. They are not simply one person's meanderings around what might be great leadership from one person's experience. Instead, it's built off of over 2 decades of studying many of the greatest leadership experts out there and greatest leadership practitioners, all distilled down to those 7 core principles. Now, we know your time is busy, so we want to make sure that we are giving you practical and actionable ideas. Because it's Friday, we're talking specifically about being nonpartisan. What does nonpartisan mean? Yes, we hear it a lot in the world of politics, but that's not what we're speaking about when it comes to business leadership. Nonpartisan simply means not aligning yourself specifically with one stakeholder or stakeholder group. You are nonpartisan. You're not being partisan. In business, that happens a lot, right? You hear of terms like the good old boys club or somebody who plays favorites. You can't do that and be the best possible boss for your business. You won't be as successful if you are partisan. Instead, you need to be non-partisan, and that's what we're talking about today. Attributes. So the core principle is nonpartisanship. What are some examples of attributes? What do nonpartisan leaders do? Well, they invite feedback. We're not talking simply about accepting or receiving feedback well. We're talking about inviting feedback. That means being proactive, encouraging others to give you feedback on your leadership, on your management style, on your projects, on the overall success of your products, services, or organization. You need to be proactive and inviting that feedback. Second, you share power and control. I know that is difficult for some of you. Some of you are cringing right now and you're saying, oh, I don't want to be sharing power and control with my team. But that's a core component of great leadership. Robert Greenleaf spoke of the concept in Latin of pares inter pares, which means first among equals. That's a key perspective of great leaders, of servant leaders. They understand that they are first among equals. They are not necessarily anointed from on high as the king or the royalty. Instead, they are the first among equals for that current leadership position. Conceptualization. Great nonpartisan leaders, bosses in business, are able to see the forest from the trees. Don't get too caught up in the weeds. And listening. There are 3 key levels of listening. Please try for the highest possible level. The most common listening is listening to respond. That's the lowest level. That's what most people do. We hear somebody speaking and we're automatically thinking about how we're going to respond. The second level is listening to understand, also often known as active listening. Active listening is great. Active listening involves simply repeating back to the speaker what you heard in your own words to validate that you understood them fully. And then third level, the level you should be striving for, is listening for feeling. I know some of you, again, are cringing. You're feeling a little awkward. We don't like to talk about feelings in the workplace. However, I am a huge fan of Minette Norman. She speaks a lot on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Specifically, she says we've got to stop looking at emotions in work and the workplace as a bad thing. Why is it that we look at everything else, as great leaders do, we look at everything as data points, but for some reason, emotions are not data points. We need to look at emotions as data points. So when it comes to listening for feeling, just practice active listening, listening to understand by repeating back what you heard in your own words to validate it, and then say, I think that means you're frustrated, or I'm getting the sense that means you're frustrated. Am I understanding correctly? That takes it to another level. Last, but certainly not least, is delegation. I talked about the concept of sharing power and control, so I'm not going to go into that here. That's really a core part of it. It's very similar to sharing power and control. Now, for a story and an example, a nonpartisan example, early in my career, fresh college graduate, I had a mentor in business. His name was John. John was a IT leader at the organization, several levels my superior. And when I was supposed to have one of my one-on-ones with him one day, there happened to be a bit of a crisis as several of the servers were crashing. Many of his direct reports were in sort of firefighting mode, hence the graphic. And I thought surely John would have to cancel or reschedule our one-on-one, but I hadn't heard from him. So I went down to his office and his assistant ushered me in. I sat down and John, asked me how I was doing. I said, John, there's a bit of a crisis going on. I understand if you need to take that, we can reschedule later. And I'll never forget, even to this day, he just was so calm and seemed a bit surprised. Like, why would he do that? I was used to always the leader having to jump in the fray. But John had done such a good job in his nonpartisan work that he had built up a strong team around him. People who may not have had the same perspectives, kind of going back to that Abraham Lincoln Team of Rivals, if you haven't read it. Excellent book. John had people directly reporting to him who he trusted to do their job, to work well. He had built a great team through a lot of nonpartisanship work, and he was comfortable and confident in their ability to solve the problem and keep him posted. So I look at John as an example of nonpartisan leadership. Now, that's supposed to say building nonpartisanship. As a better boss builder, how do we build nonpartisanship skills in your own life and in your own career? I love Max Dupree's work. If you've never read his book, Leadership is an Art, you should get it. It's a fantastic book. Max Dupree says, and I'm going to have to read this, I believe that the most effective contemporary management process is participative management. Participative management guarantees that decisions will not be arbitrary, secret, or closed to questioning. Participative management is not democratic. Having a say differs from having a vote. Max Dupree passed away a few years ago, so this quote in his book was written about early 2000s, maybe late 90s, so it's not super contemporary, but it's still fairly recent. For your own professional development, as you build your own boss skills and leadership, the question to ask is, who is participating in your leadership? Who is participating in your management, in your decision making? And who have you not heard from a while and need to reach out to? Those are the people that should be on your list to speak to next. Thank you for your time and interest again today. We're talking about nonpartisanship. I encourage you, if you like this sort of very practical and actionable leadership advice, not the pie in the sky academic approach, but the very real in the trenches management work and leadership styles, then I encourage you to check out my work at virtualleadershipprograms.com. I'm Ben Lichtenwellner. Thank you for your time. Until next time, keep serving.